Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Chris Cockerell. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Cyril James Cheeseman. Cyril Cheeseman was born in Cobar, New South Wales, on the 8th of September 1924, the son of Percy and Myrtle Cheeseman. After his schooling, he gained work as a storeman for a motor garage. On the 21st of September 1942, not long after turning 18, Cyril Cheeseman was enlisted for service in the Second World War. After entering camp at Sydney, he joined an infantry training battalion. In January 1943, he was admitted to hospital suffering from an abscess on his foot, but he was soon back with his unit. In February, he was detached to work at Walgrove Army Camp, but soon returned to training. Promoted to acting corporal while he worked as an instructor in December, in February 1944, he reverted to private and joined the 8th Battalion Citizen Military Forces. The 8th Battalion had been training as part of the general plan to move to increase the readiness of Australia's home defences, and had moved to Darwin after Japan's entry to the war in December 1941. By the time that Private Cheeseman joined the 8th, it had moved to the Atherton Tablelands in Queensland for training before deployment overseas. In March 1944, the 8th Battalion transferred to the 2nd Australian Imperial Force, the volunteer force that was able to serve outside of Australia and its territories. In May, he and his comrades in the 8th Battalion moved to Lae in New Guinea. In June, however, Cheeseman was evacuated, suffering from what would later be diagnosed as dengue fever. After being flown to Townsville in September, he recovered and returned to duty in October. He and the 8th Battalion would be involved in the Bougainville Campaign, one of the final campaigns of the war in the Pacific. Before the war, Bougainville had been administered as part of the Australian territory of New Guinea, even though geographically it is part of the Solomon Island chain. Japanese forces had occupied Bougainville in April 1942. American forces undertook landings on the island from late 1943, but as early as March 1944, Australia's senior commanders anticipated that the Americans would request that Australian troops replace American troops. Eventually, the Australians were ordered to relieve the American divisions on Bougainville. The Australians determined the Japanese forces on Bougainville, now numbering approximately 40,000, still had approximately 20% of their personnel in forward positions, and, although under strength, were organised in combat-capable formations. The Australians on Bougainville were under no illusions about the difficulty of their task. Brigadier Heathcote Tack Hammer told his 15th Brigade that the coming campaign would last for several months. The Jap still has the will to fight, but has little to back up that will. We have artillery, tanks, Air Force and flamethrowers to support a fine brigade, but it is the infantry with their own weapons who must destroy the Japs in the kill. Foot patrols were the primary means of gathering information and intelligence. As well as reconnaissance patrols, fighting patrols would assault the Japanese positions, while standing patrols would wait for ambush. Patrols located Japanese positions to be targeted by Australian mortar and artillery fire. This ability, usually provided by artillery forward observation officers, to call for artillery fire, comforted the infantry, and at times forced the Japanese to abandon entrenchments. Patrolling was physically and mentally exhausting. Contacts were frequently very close, only metres apart. Leading and second scouts are suicide jobs, the 24th Battalion report noted. The scouts' role was a nerve-wracking job. On the 5th of July 1945, the lead scout from an 8th Battalion patrol was killed when a Japanese machine gun fired at a range of about 30 metres. The patrol withdrew with mortar and artillery support, but it was too late for Private Cheeseman, who was killed in action. Operations on Bougainville ended with the surrender of the Japanese forces on the island the following month. Cheeseman was initially buried near where he fell. Later, his remains were reinterred in Port Moresby, the Bomana War Cemetery, where they lie today. He was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Cyril James Cheeseman, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and for the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.